And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Maureen J. St. Germain, who has over 25 years of experience in the area of mystical and sacred traditions. Maureen is also a prolific teacher and facilitator of spiritual knowledge for contemporary life, having taught in 24 countries as well as the Kripalu and Omega Institute. Her books have been translated into 12 languages, and she has appeared on national TV and hundreds of radio shows. She also runs a sought-after annual program, the Ascension Institute. Maureen, thank you so much for being my guest today, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be with you and to have this opportunity to share some of the knowledge.
So, Maureen, if you don't mind, how did you become able to read the Akashic Records in the first place?
I came from a family that my mother was very gifted psychically, and I don't know how it happened, but I was given access, and then I received a message saying I was being given access to a dimension that had been closed to humanity for millions of years. Eons is what the word was. And the message came through an astrologer, and it was a very curious thing because I received a message in the dream that this particular astrologer who had done a chart for me a few years earlier had a message for me. So I phoned her and she said, Maureen, I don't do messages. I do messages for myself, but I don't do messages for other people. And I said, I understand, but I was told you had a message. So maybe you could check in and let me know. So the next day she called me and she said, well, my guides, I asked my guides, should I update your chart? And they said, no, we have a message for her. And the message was that I was being given access to a realm that had been closed for eons to regular people, to humanity. And there were a number of other personal things, one of which was I was being given a personal guide that would be with me my entire life. And so as I began working in the Akashic Records, it dawned on me that that message was for the Akashic Records. So then, like a typical human, I said, so am I the only one who got access? And they said, no. And then they said, but you will be the way shower. You will show people the way. And that's why we alerted you that this was a mission that you needed to follow. So, and I studied with some people at various times, and I've learned a lot through reading, but I learned the most of what I know from my guides and my meditations.
I've had quite a few near-death experiencers say that they've gone to the Akashic Records during their experience. And I would say collectively, they describe the places like Romanesque or Greek-esque, with like columns. You're accessing while you're living. Mm-hmm. And so can you tell us more about how you actually access them?
Well, first of all, I'd like to add a little addendum to the description because it's unique for each person. So the person has the template or the idea of what a library would look like. And it is referred to as a library by many mystics. Edgar Cayce spoke about the Akashic Records when he was asked, where are you getting this information? And when he said the Akashic Records and the person's field, then he was asked, well, what is the definition of the Akashic Records? And he said, it's the book of life that's referred to in the Old Testament. Edgar Cayce was a very religious man and a very devout Christian. So even he had to decide to change his mind about reincarnation. So how I access the records is through a simple protocol, a prayer that we use. And then what I did is I developed markers for people so that they could know they were in the records. Some of the markers include pressure on the chest. Doesn't hurt, but it's this feeling that someone's, pushing on you a little bit, or pressure this way. I also have a term I call the Hammock Effect, and that feels like you're being held closely. And it's this wonderful, juicy feeling of being in a place of being treasured when you're in the records. Other markers include certain sensations on your body that can vary from an itchy ear, not too much like that, but more like a sensation in the side of the body. One of the biggest markers that I'll share is what I call the soundless sound. And you know, that sound of white noise that we used to hear when a TV station went off the air. Well, what happens is it's inside the head, and you are not hearing it outside, but you're hearing it in your head. And the sense of this white noise sound is profound, because you know it's not coming from outside of you. You can feel it in your head. So there's lots of markers. I have identified like 13 or 14. And what that does for people when they study with me is they get the chance to experience it firsthand. And they also have the ability to, you know, like in a classroom, they can interact with others who are having similar experiences. And of course, then I outlined all of that in the book called Opening the Akashic Records. And this was the gold winner book of the year, as well as the gold winner in its category. So it won double gold with the Visionary Resources Organization, Coalition of Visionary Resources. So the way you open the records is through a process that you use. It takes a few minutes to do. And then you go and allow the information to come through. And it's quite surprising. A lot of people think they can't do it, but anybody can do it. And the reason anybody can do it is because there was a dispensation that was granted in the late 90s that said anyone who wanted to access the Akashic Records could. And the reason this is so is because the reality where we're at is moving to a new plane of existence. We're at the end of an age, as the Mayans would say, the Kali Yuga. And that transformation from being a 3D into fifth dimensional crystalline type beings, we need tools. And one of the ways that we have a tool is through the Akashic Records. And I, you know, help people understand how useful it is. It's like going into a test with the answer book. You know, you go into a chemistry exam with your calculator or your tables. And this is what that's like, because humans want to know why. Why did my brother do this? Why did my son do that? Why is my spouse so angry? And the record keepers answer why so eloquently and so loving. And then they always follow up with how to manage it or what to do. And again, we have free will. So, you know, we don't have to take the advice, but it's usually extraordinarily helpful. And I'd like to share an example of a guy who called in on a radio show, if I can.
Sure.
This man had an adult daughter. He had raised her well. He was a meditator. He had been good to her. And he did not understand why she was so obnoxious to him. He didn't think he deserved it. So in the records, they said, you and she were arch enemies in another lifetime. You went on, became a master at your own work and very devoted spiritually. She did not. In this lifetime, you agreed to sponsor her and to help her get caught up. She still sees you as her arch enemy. And so she's not capable yet of treating you the same good way you treat her. So your expectation is over here, and what she's capable is here. So the record keeper said, this is why she behaves this way. And then they said, and your job is to love her anyway, and to continue to be the good father, sending birthday presents, cards, whatever you would normally do if you were on good terms, without expectation, and then let her step into it. And then they said, it may take a few years. But as a parent, you know, you don't want your kids to take forever to get their act together.
Right. It's interesting because I always thought the Akashic Records was a place you were going to go to kind of like do a life review, you know, maybe open a book, theoretically or metaphorically, and see your life and perhaps see your future. But I didn't realize you could access these records and get all this other information.
Well, you raised some really good questions. Personally, I'm not interested in past life. Like, were you Julius Caesar, or were you the French king or whatever? Because I think that that's just entertainment, and I'm not interested in that. Because the purpose of the accessing the Akashic Records is for soul growth. And when you know that your adult offspring is acting out from another environment, you don't take it personally. You get it that it's not about you. It's about them stepping into their maturity. And as far as life review, I imagine that life review does come from the Akashic Records, like when people do these near-death experiences that you've done so well. What I will say, though, is in the day-to-day scheme of things, people want to behave better. They want all the other people in their life to behave better. Mm-hmm. And so we can't get them to change. But if we have greater compassion because we understand what is going on, then we make room for them to behave better. So, and as far as the future goes, we have free will. So going into the records for future information isn't a lark, because sometimes you'll get something and sometimes you won't, because it depends upon how much energy is on it. And if you're asking about a future event, for example, think of all the free will players that we're talking about. So it becomes a real poker game, so to speak. On occasion, the record keepers do deliver advance information. For example, there was a woman who was renting one of her two bedrooms to a man that she didn't know, but was a friend of a friend, supposedly a nice gay guy. She was a cook. She wanted to use the kitchen and the dining room, and he was cool with that. It looked like a good match on paper. And just as a parting question, she says, how's that going to work out? And the record keeper said through me, well, it'll be fine until the luster wears off. And she said, luster? What luster? Now, this is a key. In the records, they very often use words that you and I don't use in everyday language. And they often use metaphor to convey a thought that kind of, then you unpack it and it becomes bigger. So right away, she jumped on and said, luster? What luster? Does that mean he's not going to stay? And they said, yes. And she said, well, when will he leave? And they named the month. And she said, of what year? Because the month was the following month. And so then she said, well, maybe I shouldn't rent to him. And the record keeper said, no, keep your date with this man, because the roommate of your dreams will not be looking for you until he is on his way out. So it's a timing thing. And also think about it. Think about how mad you'd be that, this guy turned into a drug abuser and couldn't pay the rent and did all this wacky stuff. But, the first month he was bringing her flowers. So it was goofy. And, but think about how you might feel if somebody dumped on you that way. You'd be mad. But if you knew that, it's just a thing, it's going to get me to the next really awesome thing. And the new roommate was a fabulous person. These two women got along so well that they even agreed to do movie night once a week, just because they enjoyed each other's company. And that didn't happen until the guy left. So, this woman wasn't even looking until later that year.
It's like connecting the dots. If you look at it from looking in the past, it's easy to connect the dots. I don't know if they're metaphorically trying to connect the dots for you in symbols, or are they just telling you up front, these are the dots that are going to happen for you to connect with?
I like your choice of words, and I think they wouldn't tell you what is going to happen as much as they're likely to tell you, expect something like this to happen, or to see what you're seeing from a vantage point that is remarkably different than yours. like the dad who was a good father and thought he was setting a good example, couldn't figure out why the daughter came out the way she did. And you can't make this stuff up because the information comes through so fast. It's not like I have a chance to think about it for a few seconds. The information is right there. And that's another thing about being in the records. It does not go through your brain. It actually goes from the channel right to your lips. And one of I teach in China, and I was on with a class this morning, and one of the women said, the information came through so fast, I didn't have time to think about it. It's like that. And it also means that as a channel in that moment, I don't remember what was said. Now, if you and I went for coffee and we discussed some of the things that were said, I would remember because we had a 3D conversation about it. But when you're in the records, you often have no clue of what you've said. And it doesn't mean you're not present, because you are. Your eyes are open, your mouth is moving, words are coming out, but it's not being processed through our normal thinking process.
Do you ask a question and do you hear a guide, or is it just like a download that just comes straight out of your mouth?
What happens for each guide is different. So some people see pictures, some people hear words, some people speak words, some people see words on a screen in front of them. So the typical way there's no typical way. However, what we teach the people in the class that are taking this course is however comes is good. And the more you allow, it's a little bit like learning another language, really, because some people learn by hearing and saying, other people learn by seeing and reading. And what we gain is the information flows in. And another thing that we tell the students, it's not your job to interpret it. It's your job to convey what you get. For example, I normally have been given images and words simultaneously. But one time I had a reading with someone, I didn't get any images, but I felt like crying, like really crying. And I said to the man, I'm the only thing I'm getting is I feel like crying. Do you know what's going on? And he said, I'm in a tough spot because my son is in prison for a long time and my daughter won't speak to me. And that would make you want to cry, And then the reading went on from there. So that's one thing. And then as we develop the skill, more tools open up. So the more experience you have, your words get pictures. The more experience you have, your pictures get words. So it's a little bit like that.
Do you ever hear voices, like hear the voice of your guide or hear the voice of someone in the Akashic Records? Or does it only come to you in pictures and words?
I often hear words.
Will it be words in your own voice or another voice from some other being?
It's more like a thought that has been made audible. So it doesn't have an identifier. I'm not hearing, on occasion, I'll hear, let's say, the Ascended Master El Morya, because I worked with him very closely. And I'll know it's him because of the way the words are spoken, because he has a commanding voice, and he's talking to you when he does that. At other times, it's not discernible until I ask, who is this? Who's speaking? And that's something we can do as well. Generally, though, when we're in someone's Akashic Records, the guides are the guides of the client. And then when you open your own records, it's your own guides. Your own guides will assist with the connection you make with someone else's guides. So that's why each person is different. And another thing that I've noticed is people who have medical problems tend to be attracted to the guide who has a lot of medical experience, as either a nurse or a therapist. People who have a connection in a certain country and speak that language tend to attract those kinds of people. And a lot of times it's not even known ahead of time. They just pick this person and then they discover it's a really good match. And I think that that's deliberate. I think that Source is guiding us every day. And when we decide we want to have a session in the Akashic Records, what's really happening is we're ready to receive a understanding and solutions to whatever's going on in our life.
Do you think people always understand what they get from the Akashic Records clearly, or is it possible that sometimes people misinterpret them?
Well, I don't know whether misinterpreted is the right word, but I do agree that they don't always get it. But what usually happens when they don't get it is this feeling that kind of filters in, and you're in the shower and you're going, oh, I know what that was about. You know, they might argue, no. I actually had a client who argued with me because I could see a cat and the cat was trying to express gratitude. And I said, your cat, and she stopped me. I don't have a cat. And I said, well, there's a cat that wants to express gratitude to you. And she argued with me for like 5 minutes. And then later she emailed me and said, oh, there's this stray cat I've been feeding to keep the rat population down. And obviously I got it. They argue with you and you just say, okay, fine, whatever. This is what I'm getting. I have no explanation for you. And the good news is, as a conveyor, as a channel of this information, you don't have to know what it means. It's for the client. You know, there was one time I was channeling a message for somebody who I didn't know. And I saw, like, you know, that T-shirt that people wear that has a Superman logo on it right here.
Right.
And that's what I saw. And because she was asking in her mind's eye for a message from her father. So I just, you know, like gave her this information. And I said, I don't know what it means. And she says, well, I do, because my father, our last name begins with S. And my father always wears this Superman shirt. And he always told us we were the Superman family. And how could I have known that? You know, cool stuff like that happens.
I do this show every day and I have all these conversations, and I feel like possibly I'm slowly opening up just through these conversations. And recently I had a dream one day, and it was like, I think it was even somebody else's voice. And I was kind of, you know, at the dream state where you're kind of almost waking up, but I heard this like, hey, Jeff. And I kind of like got up and looked around my room like, who said that? And it was really kind of a freaky thing. And I was just wondering if, you know, when you're accessing your guides. To me a lot.
When you have that morning experience, it's almost always precog. So if you had heard, hey, Jeff, and then just lay there, okay, what you got for me? Mm-hmm. You would have gotten more information next time.
You know, it was the first time and I was shocked.
Well, you know, what I will offer to you is what people used to think of as weird is the new normal.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Yep. All right. Your newest book is called Mastering Your 5D Self.
Right. This one.
And we talk about ascension and going into the 5D, you know, reality. But I never really put it together that we're ourselves becoming 5D. You know, I thought it was just the earth is that.
Right. I've been working this topic for probably 30 years. Mm-hmm. And I thought the same thing you did at first. But there was a very interesting thing that happened to me early on that totally rocked my world. I knew that humanity was becoming fifth dimensional, and I thought everything was just going to level up. And then things started disappearing. You know, I'd put a ring down or car keys or sunglasses, and then they would disappear. So I started asking, okay, where did my stuff go? And I was told it was in a higher dimension. So my initial interpretation, inaccurate, by the way, my inaccurate interpretation was that my stuff was going ahead into the higher dimension. As you know, we're practicing. You know, like we send monkeys into space, right?
Right.
So, but one day, one of my sons came home from school and he threw something in his backpack and threw it on the floor, and then came in the kitchen and was talking to me about it. And he said, here, I want to show you what I'm talking about. And he goes back to his backpack. Now, I had seen him put the thing in his backpack, and he starts tearing apart his book. Mom, it's not here. I just put it here. And I said, I know. I saw you do it. And so without even thinking, because I was in my own home, in my safe environment. I wasn't out in public with a bunch of people. I just said, oh, honey, it's probably in a higher dimension. We'll just ask for it to come back. You come back in the kitchen and finish your story. And so he did. And after he finished the story, I said, okay, why don't you see if it's there? And it was right on top. He had pulled everything out and had to put everything back. And that's when I understood and asked about this. And I was told, Maureen, when you put yourself down, you are in a higher dimension. And then when you go looking for it, you're back in a, quote, stress environment where you're anxious to find it. So you drop back from your bliss state to your polarity state. And in that process, you no longer can see it. So in 3D, you can't see what's going on in 5D, but in 5D, you're actually participating in 3D without knowing.
That's a lot. Yeah, I had to think about that.
So when you're in 5D, it's like when you fall in love, when something really wonderful happens, you get great news about your podcast, it's gone, viral, some cool thing like that. Mm-hmm. And you're in this blissful state and you put something down and then you don't see where it is. But in 3D, we're worried about life. We're worried about, the job we're doing, the obligations we've agreed to, eating, all kinds of stuff. And we tend to see things in a polarity-based way. So my 2 books on 5D, the Waking Up in 5D and Mastering Your 5D Self, help people not only understand this shift, but also how can they get there and stay there? Because what I have seen is it's like a sine wave. And you keep moving up, the sine wave's, angled up, but it's still, I'm in 5D, then I'm not. I'm in 5D, and then I'm not. And this place of 5D is where you don't have judgment. You're compassionate towards everyone. In a way, you think everything's funny because even the bad stuff that happens, you can see the humor in it. I got a flat tire and I missed my yoga teacher. I didn't really feel like yoga today anyway. You're kind of laughing at yourself about it. So those kinds of things, no matter what happens, you experience it in a different way. Your experience is 5th dimensional. And, when I was a young mom, my mother and I were having a conversation about one of my sons who was always in trouble. He was like the biggest problem. And he was a good kid, but if it could be tested, he would test. And he would cut school. We would do all kinds of cool things that kids that age do, but his brothers never did that stuff. So I'm thinking, what are we doing here? And my mother said, honey, kids don't grow up in a straight line. And I was so naive. I said, what does that mean? And she says, well, when they do something mature, they usually follow it with something stupid. And of course, that's what happened. I am happy to report that son is now a commander in the military, which is hilarious. When you look at, he was the class cut-up.
I want to kind of go back to this. So you were saying that when you're in 3D, you can't see what's in 5D, but in the reverse, you can. When you're in 5D, you can see what's in 3D.
Yeah, think of Russian dolls where they're nested.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Like that.
Oh, that's interesting.
So what happens is I'll call it the 5Ders can play in 3D, and I'm going to say, but they won't want to, but they don't. It's not an issue for them. For example, my stepsister had a way about her that was sharp, but she was a nice person. And when she called me, quote, the Ice Queen one time at a family gathering, I smiled to myself and said, oh, she must have known I was a queen in Egypt. And, you just you don't feel it. You don't hear it as painful. And you're so full of joy. That's why everything is funny in 5D. And when you're in this blissful place, it's easy to get there. There's no drugs involved. It's easy to get there. And one of the easiest ways to get there is to say to yourself, I'm asking for a day of heaven on earth for me and everyone I come in contact with and everyone I'm in contract with. And this came to me as a big message when I inadvertently had said it to someone, and a whole bunch of stuff happened, flood in my basement, flight changes, all kinds of crazy stuff. And when I finally got on the plane and everything worked, everything like fell into place, even though it didn't look like it was going to. And I said, how the heck did I pull that off? And I was well, you asked for a day of heaven on earth. And I thought, oh, I'm going to do that the next time I have a chocolate block day. The second time I did it, it occurred to me I could ask every day, and so can you. So the idea is I'm asking for a day of heaven on earth for me and everyone I come in contact with and everyone I'm in contract with. And I like the contract with part because that means I'm praying for my webmaster, whether I talk to her every day or not. And everybody I come in contact means that when I walk in the bank, no matter who I'm going to talk to, they're going to have a great day because they've connected with this yummy energy. And what is a day of heaven on earth? It's the same thing as heaven. So 5D, if you want to define 5D for people, it's what everyone else imagines heaven is. We have the ability to interact with people. We have experiences that are joyful. So there's like no drama in heaven. It's all good, juicy stuff. And that's 5D.
I like the way you put that. When you said everybody I'm in contract with, I was wondering if you meant like pre-birth contracting with, not literal here on the earth.
I never really thought about that as a definition. At the personality level, I'm thinking about everybody, like I'm in contract with you because I have this date with you.
Right.
But I wonder, I imagine that it also extends to the people you just defined. So you just expanded my definition.
That's awesome. Well,
pretty cool.
Can you give us any other tips to help us become more 5D?
One of the things that I do is a bedtime prayer that is in this book, Waking Up in 5D. And the most profound piece of that is you say to yourself, I am waking up in 5D. And I have literally felt the shift. Maybe I got out of bed with a little headache or something. And the minute I sit up, boom, everything's perfect. It's astounding. I'm waking up in 5D. That's one tool. Another tool is to say to yourself, dear God, or dear source, whatever you would call it, show me how much I am loved. Show me. And then all kinds of cool stuff happens. A stranger will say, hey, I like your dress. You look great. Or it's somebody that you know and haven't talked to in a while and say, I'm just feeling so good about our friendship. I just want to let you know that you're important to me and I really appreciate everything you contribute to my life. Cool stuff like that starts to happen. And that really lifts you out of the doldrums. Another cool thing to do, and this is if you're really depressed, is to watch sunsets every night. And my guides told me to do this when I was going through a really tough time when my first marriage ended and I was a little distraught, to say the least. And I asked what I could do that would help me pull me out of my sadness. But then I said, but don't make it too hard. I'm like being crabby about needing help, And so they said, go watch the sunset. And so I'd get in my car after work every day and find a place that I could watch the sunset. And later, many years later, I came across this study that actually scientifically proved that watching the sunset will pull you out of a depression because subconsciously you'll know there's another one tomorrow.
That's amazing. It almost sounds like part of becoming 5D is just acknowledging that it's happening and acknowledging that you are becoming 5D.
I think that's a really good point. And I think if everyone were to do that and then say, and I'm willing myself to jump in with everybody else in 5D, I think we'd see a big shift right away. Absolutely.
It sounds like what you're saying is the reality of 5D, it's not going to be like we're in a place that's like magical and mystical and heavenly. It's just we'll be here, but we're always going to be kind of blissful and happy.
Yes. And The funny thing is, initially, a lot of people thought when we become 5D, it's like a permanent thing, but that's not true. 5D is a place, which is a data set, a vibrational data set, which kind of helps explain what you just said about we're the ones leveling up, and the earth will shift with us. But if we get to be 5D, it doesn't mean we're going to stay there, because until we reach a certain level of mastery and self-love that allows us to take and receive, I'll call them insults or whatever, and you don't feel it, then you're in 5D pretty much all the time. I guess what I want people to understand is 5D is a decision, because we're in a free will world. So when you out loud say, I'm waking up in 5D, I'm choosing to be 5D this day, I'm asking for a day of heaven on earth, those kinds of things tell the environment you're in, okay, she's leveling, she's choosing to level up. And then they're going to respond with the experiences at that level. Somebody pushes your buttons and you drop back down and you do it again. And until you can hold that vibe. It's just like, years ago, they didn't put training wheels on bikes. Kids had to learn how to ride by balancing themselves. But today, you can't buy a kid's bike without training wheels. So this leveling up business is trial and error. But it's not a hard trial, especially when you set the stage and you say, this is my environment.
I really like how you were talking about insults and 5D, because it sounds like to me 5D people, they'll hear insults and stuff all the time, and it's just, that doesn't mean anything to them anymore. It's just a joke, and they don't even care. And maybe even the people that are surrounding you could tell you, how could you let that person say that to you? They're pulling you down. But maybe they don't understand that it doesn't matter to you anymore.
What happens, you're absolutely right. What happens is you're almost like that special finish they put on new cars, that you're so shiny, and not necessarily in a light way. Of course, your light is big, but your field is so shiny that an outsider can't penetrate it. So they can't hurt you. And you can hear what they say, and you might be laying in bed that night thinking, oh, were they trying to insult? I didn't catch that,
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of conversation, or like if a friend says, why do I let them talk to you that way? And I will tell you that one time when, I don't know what it was, but something happened, and there was some, I don't know, fear or something being projected in my way. And I remember saying, I'm not that important. And instantly, the ability to try and catch me, it wasn't there, because if you're trying to insult someone or bring them down, you got to get them to buy in to the first part of whatever it is you're saying. Oh, you think you're so smart. You think you can do this. There's this quality that, well, yeah, I can do that. But when you are interacting with others, you want their approval, you want their love. And so you're looking to receive approval, maybe even subconsciously. But when you have this connection at 5D, you already know you're loved. You already can feel that you are plugged in. And so when somebody tries to take that away, you go, whatever, you don't even feel it. And I like the analogy of how you put your hand on a little kid and they're swinging at you,
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Now, what about this? It's one thing to have people try to insult you, but what about in life if you're at this 5D level and people are like trying to rip you off, like take advantage of you monetarily or something? How do you manage that?
Jack Canfield writes in his success book lots of things that happened to him. Contracts were broken, people stole, and the same has happened to me. I've had people steal from me. I had one person go on a sacred journey and their checks bounced, and that practically pulled me into bankruptcy. And you look at it and you struggle through it. There's no question. But as you move into a place of non-judgment, your need to judge others falls away. And there was a channeled message from the Ascended Master Sanat Kumara. I was teaching in Hong Kong, and they were trying to explain this whole idea in 5D, there's no more karma. And if the sooner we accept that, the sooner we can be 5D, because it is the fact that we believe in karma that's keeping us locked into this polarity thing. So Sanat Kumara said a bunch of things, but the key element that I have kind of memorized is the game of 3D is over. The game will end when there are no more players. Will you be the first to leave or the last? I'm out. You know?
Yeah.
So that was pretty obvious to me, but you know, and I thought, what a great analogy. You know, nowadays, lots and lots of people play games on, you know, video games and stuff. I never did, but I had 4 sons that were always online playing games. So
Yeah. I'm going to switch gears with you because 2 days ago I had a guest, and a majority of our conversation was about a Merkaba, and you have one right behind you on your desk. Can you give your definition to my audience? What is a Merkaba and what does it do for you?
okay, so yeah, isn't this cool? I got this at Scandinavian Designs, and they only had one, and I bought it right off their display. You know, it was a miracle I was there and when they had it. So this thing is often called the Merkaba, and the reason I'm saying often called is because this truly is a star tetrahedron. There's a tetrahedron that points down, and there's a tetrahedron that points up. And a true Merkaba is 3 of these guys that are spinning, one spinning left, one spinning right, and one stationary one. Stationary one is your physical body, and then left spin is your emotional body, and right spin is your etheric body. Now, or your physical, mental, emotional, excuse me. Now, what is a Merkaba? It is an energetic field around your body that is capable of holding the 5th dimensional space for you. So it's like a uniform or bodysuit that allows you to be your 5th dimensional self, even if you haven't earned it, even if you have not yet mastered it. And so the Merkaba then helps you level up. So it's a wonderful tool. In my world, we do a 17 breath meditation. And then there's also a 5D Merkaba, which I teach as a leveling up from the original 17 breath. And so the field itself transforms your capacity to interact in the world from, I'll say, immature to mature. And I learned the Merkaba back in 94 and taught it right away, almost right away. I was certified by Drumvilo Melchizedek. And what I want to say about that is this field is so powerful that it can change everything for you in a good way, no matter what your spiritual practice is, whether you're a devout Catholic, a Buddhist, a Muslim. Your practice of the Merkaba amplifies and elevates your spiritual work. And for me, I've always been a devout person. You know, when I finished high school, I thought maybe I should, you know, enter the convent. You know, then the whole idea of boys and all that kind of changed my mind. But for a little while, I was seriously contemplating it. And what I can tell you is that even though I was been a devout person all my life, when I learned this tool, the previous 20 years were doubled that fast, in an instant. My gifts, my abilities, spiritually, clairvoyance, cognition, all of that stuff, it just was amplified. And the results of my spiritual work, my meditations, took me higher. So it was like, this is a no-brainer. It's like those devices you put on your car that make your gas more efficient, stuff like that. That's what it's like. It's amazing. And what I believe is that we are remembering something that we used to do. So it's a remembering tool.
So in one of your books on the 5D, whether it's the Master Your 5D Self or Waking Up in 5D, do you teach how to do the Merkaba meditation?
I don't teach it in my books. I teach it on video because it is a tool that without the visuals, it would be very difficult to learn. So we have a lot of visuals in video, and we also have a lot of discussion because we actually taped a live class so people can hear other people's questions that are probably the same as their questions. So the teaching of it in my world is on video, and that's easily acquired by buying it and downloading it or buying the DVD, if you feel like you want to have a copy of it.
Is there many things that you should do, or is it just a meditation and imagining that you're inside the Merkaba, or are there other exercises?
What happens when you learn the Merkaba is you learn the geometry behind the scenes. And what that does is validates for you, oh yeah, this is really a working system. And I will say that the activation breaths, the last 3 breaths, are tied directly to who we are. So the first activation is to turn it on. And I taught it this way to say to people, when you turn it on, you spin the 2 star tetrahedrons spinning in opposite directions. What you're doing is, it's like being with a car, and you are, let me put over here where you can see it. And you have one whole field spinning this way and one whole field spinning this way. So you're creating a momentum. It's kind of like when you turn on your car, the motor starts to run. And then the second last breath, you are creating a ratio. And that ratio is the golden mean. And the golden mean is found throughout the universe. You can see I've got it behind me on the Vitruvian Man. And the golden mean is a source for how we create. And there's all kinds of information out there. And I teach a lot about that too. But what I'm trying to convey here is that the codes to activate it are directly related to us. And then the third code, the last breath, the last activation breath, is based on the speed of particles that move in our reality. And that's the speed of light, which is 9/10 the speed of light. So our speed is electrons move at 9/10 the speed of light. And so we're actually tuning to here so we can go there. You can't go there. It's like when you're in a mall, if you're trying to figure out where to go to a particular store, you have to know you are here before you can know what next step to take. So you tune to here, you're plugged into how we evolve. So then going somewhere else in your Merkaba is doable. It's a light vehicle to carry yourself to higher places.
Do you think that Judaism has any information, or the Kabbalah has any information on the Merkaba? Because in a way, the Star of David is like a 2D, to me, representation of the Merkaba.
Well, you are absolutely right, because where is it? Beyond the Flower of Life. In Beyond the Flower of Life, I actually described that. And I explained that in the Jewish mysticism tradition, we talk about the Merkava, as they call it, translated literally from the Hebrew. The noun Merkava means chariot, to ride in, and it relates to the throne chariot of God in the prophetic visions. A likeness of a man drives a chariot. The Merkaba, as we mean it, is a body of light, or light body. It's activated from a geometric field. And then I go on and I explain more about, in the Old Testament, Ezekiel 1:10, they actually call the Merkaba by name. And they refer to how it worked. And then later tradition found in the Zohar also refers to the Merkaba, and that the Zohar is a Spanish mystic, Moses de Leon, who wrote about that. So many mystics in the Hebrew tradition have found or described that information. So you're right on the money.
That's amazing. Why do you think we've lost all that information? over the, I mean, it's there, but I don't think that's
war
normally.
has a lot to do with it. The Library of Alexandria was burned. Nobody has access to the Library of the Vatican, or few people do. So it's where is the data? And the other thing is fear. When the conquistadors came to Peru, if you didn't convert to Christianity, you were killed. So of course you would bury or forget whatever you were taught, because you wouldn't want to be in the line of fire. And the same is true in China, where China was going through their cultural revolution, and they took down many monasteries and did a lot of serious damage to their culture. And in Germany, you could go on and on. So it's suppression. And I think the suppression has to do with the desire for the leaders of the moment to have control over the people. And true control of people comes through their belief system.
Do you think that once we get to 5D, war will end?
Yes, absolutely. I think we're well on our way. I also think that what we're told in the media isn't always the truth. There are many times that I've read a headline or heard something, and I don't get into politics particularly, but I'll get an instant hit. That's not true. And there it is in the headline. That's not true. And I don't know how I know. I just know.
Do you think that there's a certain element of the population that either unknowingly wants to keep us in 5D or are being manipulated into keeping us?
I think both those statements are true. And I refer to those people as those that would have us fail. And there's big stories behind all this. One of the best ways to get your arms around it is to read a book by Timothy Wiley called Confessions of a Rebel Angel. Timothy is no longer with us, but he did give me a lovely endorsement for one of my books. And I think he's written a series of books, maybe 5 or 6 books. But the first one, Confessions of a Rebel Angel, really kind of blows the lid off of what we believe. And it's not a political book. It's basically the story of a rebel angel who's back here redeeming herself. It's kind of funny. I mean, it's comical to me to think about it that way. I mean, those people who do believe in light and dark, and they talk about the quote rebel angels, it would confound them to say, okay, now they're redeeming themselves. They're doing their what do they call it? Civic duty, but that's not the right word. But you know what I mean. When you're sent to jail, and then they say, okay, you can work it off by doing
community service.
Community service. There you go. So these angels are now doing community service, trying to help us get our act together, which is, and then there's no fear. How can there be fear about that? It's really, I think it's really funny. I think everything is funny, as you can tell, but it's because of the joy that moves through you. How can there be anything else, and sometimes we get frustrated. I get frustrated at my computer sometimes. I'm not above being, my buttons being pushed, but I love the opportunity to interact with people and to help them see what I see, or to help them experience what I experience. One of my students said to me, you emanate such a feeling of unconditional love. It's hard not to get, not to feel loved, even when you're not feeling love towards yourself. So it's all good.
Well, we live in a 3D world. And, maybe we're in and out of 5D, so we still feel frustrations.
Absolutely.
And,
Right. So we want to cherish the moments we're in 5D. And one of the things that I do is I allow the 3D stuff that happens, and then I reinterpret it, So, yeah, we live in a 3D world, and we interact at that level, but we're all kind of leveling up, and it's getting better and better. Think about this. When someone's late, 5 years ago, you'd give them a hard time. You'd say, I've been waiting. But most people nowadays say it's not a problem.
Yeah.
I'm still here. I'm good. Or they say, I couldn't wait. I have to go. Can we redo this? There's never any, like, you were bad for being late. It's so cool. And that's a simple proof to each and every one of us that there are a few people that are still holding on to judgment and control. But a lot of us are at that place where, we're mellow. And one of the things that I did, especially in the book Waking Up in 5D, and I also did it beyond in the Mastering Your 5D Self, is I gave people a list of words that we use all the time. Excuse me. And those words are I can't, I won't, I shouldn't, those kinds of things. But one of the biggest offenders is I have to. I have to cancel my yoga teacher because I need to do this. I have to do this. And I have to pick up the kids. I have to meet my sweetheart. I have to go get flowers. It's our anniversary. All that have to business hands off a piece of my sovereignty to the universe. And then we wonder why we're out of control. We wonder why we have so much control around us. And that's because we've surrendered so much of our control just by our word choices. So one of the fastest ways you can regain your sovereignty and step into 5D more frequently is to start saying proactive statements that are like this. I choose to pick up my kids on time because they like it when I'm on time. I get to go to dinner with my sweetheart because it's our anniversary. I promised my boss I'd get this report done. I need to leave now. I want to make sure I have enough time to get it finished. These are then me saying in my power, I got it all. And it's amazing how then, other kinds of interactions, you get your power back. You're in a conversation with a credit card company, the tax collector, whatever it is, and your sovereignty becomes the defining thing. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, I need to switch gears with you because I'm running out of time. We've talked about your 2 books, and I believe you have some more. One's called Reweaving the Fabric of Your Reality. Another one's called Be a Genie.
Yep.
You want to tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah. Reweaving is a wonderful book, and it's a tiny little book, not very thick, and it has information on the interaction of people with entities. And practically everybody has entities. We pick them up in the grocery store, in the hospitals, wherever we are out and about. And to clear that energy is very powerful, and it's taught how to do that. But more importantly, it explains why people are cohabitating with another soul, and just to help you understand it so that you're not running around scared, there's a ghost in me or something. It's a wonderful book, and it's got, the first part is the understanding of the material, and then the second part is the practical steps you can take to clear it.
Before you go to that book, when you say entities, are you saying that those are human entities that are not in bodies anymore, or
right.
non-human entities?
Yeah. The biggest. So let's put it this way. In this world, only one soul per body is allowed. So if Grandpa dies and he moves into you and he's worried about you, he might be trying to, control you a little bit to keep you safe. When you die, you lose your physical body. That's pretty obvious. But you also lose your mental body and your emotional body. But you still hang on to your desire body. And that desire body then, as an energetic, moves into you. I've had clients who had people move into them when someone died, close friends, daughter dies, and you feel so bad for them. You end up, allowing that spirit to come into you. And that spirit's mad at God because she died early. So then every chance to express anger is escalated. And when you remove that energy and send that soul back home to God, where it was supposed to go, then the original person get back to their normal self. So the incident of family members inhabiting living family members is pretty high. And if you know someone who has lost a family member, one client, I said to her, so how long has this been going on? And she said 12 years. And I said, and when did your father pass away? 12 years ago. And who in your life disapproved your husband going golfing? Because that's what they were working on at the time. And she said, my father disapproved of anyone having fun. And so then I said, so what do you think about the possibility that your father moved into you? You were the only one of his 12 kids who would have enough compassion to put up with him and take care of him in his dying days. Maybe he wanted to know what made you tick. And so he moved into you, and with your compassion, you didn't resist. So we cleared him. I advise people to, go through some goodbyes just in case this is so. And then we do clearing work, and the whole problem went away, just evaporated. This is a couple that were happily married. She loved that he took care of himself and did things he liked to do. But then when the moment to leave the house would come, heck would happen. So those are the kinds of things that can be cleared. And part of what I teach is how to do it yourself, so that you don't have to rely on someone. And I also have a lot of YouTube videos on clearing work that people can watch. They're short and help them learn for themselves. Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you mentioned that. What is your channel called?
Maureen J.
All right. I'll put a link to that in the description.
Thank you.
All right.
And in this book, this is a fabulous book on sacred geometry and manifestation. And I show how in this world, we can prove that source code, again, is the golden mean, or phi. Mathematicians know it as phi. Everybody else knows it as the golden mean. And it is the relationship between something that we would call 1 and something that we call 1.618. So, for example, the relationship between the little finger and the beginning of the palm would be 1. And then if you extend it to here, you would see that this represents phi. And then the same thing is true from the hand to here to the elbow is in phi. We say in phi, meaning it's 1 to 1.618. So anyway, this book has a fabulous formula in it called the Phoenix sequence. And the Phoenix sequence proved that manifestation is alive and well. And it proves it in such a way that it's irrefutable. What that does for the person who's trying to do something is that they now have mental proof, because a lot of times when you're trying to manifest something, it isn't just a visualization. I have a very deep comprehension that it's way more than visualization. But then when you add the mathematical proof, that whole thing that your body or mind does, well, what if this is just bogus? What if this is just a pipe dream? What if this is too good to be true? All of that just evaporates because you have the mathematical formula that proves it. Phoenix sequence. Very good stuff.
Yeah. And you were kind of, I thought, mentioning it earlier when you were talking about the Vitruvian man back there. And I thought you were talking about fractals.
Fractals are in here as well. And fractals are self-similar replications based on, again, this idea that you can find source code within every irrational number. And a lot of people don't know that. And I'll leave you with a parting formula that I won't prove, but your listeners, those of you who are into the math scene, can listen to. This is the Phoenix sequence formula. Take any two numbers you can think of, and add them sequentially. So if you pick 2 and 1, the next one is 3. And then you would add 1 to 3, that's 4. Then 3 and 4 are 7, like that. So you make a long line and you add the first digit to the second digit. Then you add the second digit to the third digit, okay? And you're drawing a line each time you do an addition. On the 9th and 10th iteration, 9th and 10th repetition of this line, those two divided into each other will always produce 1.618, or phi, or the golden mean.
I've got to sit down and look at that on paper.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
All right. Well, you have all these books. It sounds like you have courses. What else do you got going on that you want us to know about?
I do have an annual program called the Ascension Institute, where I take people really deep and really high. All the graduates always ask for a year two, which is fun. It was not my plan to do a year two. I was just going to do a year one. And we have a small group of maybe 15 people that come together for meetings twice a month, plus retreats. And I give trainings and answer questions and deal with issues. And it is absolutely one of the most incredible things a person can do for themselves. It is on the high end because, to be fair, I am a little bit like you in that I'm interested in getting the word out to people. I'm not that interested in, making a lot of money for me. So my costs are 20, with staff and internet and all that jazz, are 20% higher than the money we make on books and guided meditations and trainings. So some of what we do in the Ascension Institute is subsidize the whole program, which then creates opportunities for lots of people at every level. I also have a monthly program that people can join in and get, good information from me and opportunities from me in terms of trainings and knowledge-based videos that help them shift and grow. And then I have outside courses that I've created on sacred geometry that help people understand. I've led a class on remote viewing, which has turned out remarkably well. And I'll tell you a quick story from that. And we will be offering that again. I am aware that there are some people who are offering it, at the $1,000 price, and we didn't do that. But I have, as a co-teacher, a neighbor, lives like a mile from me, who's one of the world's most renowned remote viewers. So we're teaching this class, we're in a level 2 class, and we tell everyone to go remote view the Titanic. And in case you don't know what remote viewing is, it's literally sending your consciousness to another location to have a look and then report back. So send everybody to the Titanic to review it. And everybody, turned in their little report. Most of us saw a rusty ship. Some people saw some souls that were lost that they sent home, various things like that. But one man said, I don't get it. I'm seeing a warehouse. This thing is in a warehouse. And anybody who knows the true Titanic story knows that the ship was changed out at the very last minute. And the ship they called the Titanic wasn't the Titanic. And they sailed a different ship than the Titanic.
Wow, I've never heard that before.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And when he first said it, my partner went, what the heck? And I thought about it for a split second. And of course, I'm plugged in. So I just downloaded what's going on. And I said, oh, I heard this story. Do you think it's true? And of course, my partner at that class said, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. I forgot about that.
Is it hidden somewhere in a warehouse?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Ask, do a search, something like, where is the original Titanic? Or was the original Titanic the ship that sailed, that sank? And it wasn't. Everybody called it the Titanic, but it wasn't. Every ship has a name.
Why did they make an extra one?
It is common in shipbuilding to build two of the same. I don't know other than that. I know other people who've built ships and they build two. And I guess, for the effort they're making, they want to make two.
Amazing.
Like in the kitchen, when I make quiche, I make two.
Do you put out anything daily or weekly on social media that people consume? Like, do you have a Facebook page or Instagram or something?
Yes, we do have a Facebook page and we do have an Instagram page. And it's so fun that you asked today, because yesterday my team came to me and said, we're not doing enough on Instagram and Twitter. And here's our plan. So they gave me a marketing plan and I said, go for it. So you're going to see a lot more. So for sure, we would love to have you join. It is Maureen St. Germain on Instagram. Twitter, it's I think I may need to change my Twitter handle because it's TEI TE Inc. So it's letters TE and then I, and then the I becomes the word incorporated. And I think that it's enough outdated that maybe we need to change that up. And so you can sign up for that, but we may ask everyone to jump to a new handle. And part of the problem was, you know how it is. You first hear these things, you sign up, and then years go by and you can't even remember the password and nobody will help you recover it.
Right.
And you've lost it and they won't let anybody else have it either. So it is what it is.
If people want to reach out to you and contact you, are you open to that? And if so, where should they reach you?
I have a person who handles all that. And then she sends me individual things that she knows I need to handle. And her name is Kat, K-A-T. And then at St. Germain Mystery School.com. So it's STGERMAIN. And then the word mystery and school.com.
All right.
And she'll make sure I get it if I need to get it.
Well, Maureen,
Or info.
Okay. Maureen, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
I think the most important thing is to connect with your higher self. And I have a protocol that helps people learn how to connect with their higher self and get 100% accuracy. And it's phenomenal. And so if you write Kat and ask her for the protocol, she will send it to you at no charge. Now, I do have an additional training that people can buy that's got, recordings and lots of extra information. But the simple protocol called 3 Steps to an Accurate Higher Self. So if you write for us and say you heard about it on Jeffrey Reynolds' show, we'll send it to you as a gift. It's a phenomenal tool. And it's something you use every day in the kitchen, in raising your kids, at work. I could go on and on. There's so many amazing stories.
All right, Maureen. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. And I appreciate you. You've done a marvelous job of pulling it all out of me. And it's a big, big thing. So I'm very grateful that you managed all that.
Thank you.
My hat's off to you.
Thank you. Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.